I'd like to start out with a confession. Who wants to confess? We got a tape, yeah. No, the confession is that several years ago I came up with this rather cockamamie idea of this. Can we frame everything in terms of the language of heaven, hell, and the garden? And it was kind of almost like a party joke. And, it's sort of like the kind of thing where at a party someone says, you're either a suicide, a murderer, or murder-suicide. Which one are you? That kind of thing. Anyway, I did it in that spirit of whimsy at one of the artist talks at Almonds, and I used all the artists that were in the room, their art as examples of what I was talking about. That didn't go over very well. Anyway, one of my missions in life is to try to find ways of getting people comfortable with looking at art, especially looking at painting and sculpture, and mostly painting. And by giving them like handholds, some way, something they can grab onto and kind of look through that lens. And I think that the archetypes of heaven, hell, and the garden go a long way towards being able to do that. And so to start with, I am going to read something, and that'll start to frame it a bit, okay? And then we can look at some more slides and go from there, and then hopefully we'll just have like a discussion about this if it's of interest to people. I see a lot of creative people in the audience, which I'm sorry I'm seeing. So let me start off by saying that these are sort of declarations, that I take them for what they're worth. The creative imagination seeks clarity to address the complexity of life and thought. Unable to tolerate his isolation, God spoke, seeking resonance for his thoughts. The first word was the alphabet, the forms and sounds of which are the building blocks of all creative expression. The articulation of thoughts and feelings, seeking order, clarity, and perfection, is how we define meaning and meaningfulness. Art is the reenactment of the myth of creation. It is a creative act, a process by which the artist inhales chaos and exhales coherence. The art produced does not seek to explain truth. It embodies it. Art is the history of interpretation, or more precisely, it is the history of reinterpretation of that which has been meaningful. The importance of reinterpretation is that it keeps its meaning up to date, vital, and significant, challenged, and alive. Inquiry is sacred. Heaven, hell, and the garden are archetypes that appear as symbols, forms, and narratives throughout the Western culture history that express belief in mythologies, religions, and attempt to make order and sense of life. The visual language of heaven is geometry. And let's see if I can move through any of this. Yeah. The visual language of heaven is geometry. Geometry is perfection. Circles, squares, triangles, arches, order and calm communion, timeless and eternal. The individual is united with the whole, the body beyond torment and isolation. A heavenly depiction will have a central circle in which God or Jesus sits atop the arc of a rainbow, surrounded by saints and angels all in a row. The angels are a oneness of shared features and are genderless. The saints are individuated but of equal stature. The color palette of heaven favors the pastel tones. Pastel tones and warm colors. Gold is an important material. There are no contrasts. There are no shadows. Edges crisply defined or softly rendered exert pressure, no pressure or conflict. Balance and order are essential and immutable. There is no humor, no wit, no irony. High seriousness, a realm beyond conflict and confusion. And what I'm doing is obviously mixing up historical and biblical specific imagery with contemporary art, modern art, things that you don't necessarily associate those same qualities and of aspiration with, but there is definitely a connection between them. And so that's things to look at and think about. The democracy of a grid is one of those contemporary language that fits into the concepts of the loss of individuality, the loss of self into a wholeness, into a wholeness of equal parts. One way that you can spot the heavenly arts is that it is not interchangeable in any way. It is the thing itself. If looking at a work of art like this Mondrian, if you think you could move that yellow somewhere else, you're wrong. And that's absolutely part of the aspiration of the artist, to find out within their own language those places where the experience is irreducible. And anything that would mitigate that becomes a change that obliterates the object itself. Da Vinci sought to elevate the human body to that space of perfection. And so the Vitruvian man here is that the square, squaring the circle. Both examples of one, equality is the circle, and continuous continuity, whatever the circle, and the proportions of the human body fitting into those attitudes. The balancing something that shouldn't be balanced is another aspect of that. That being able to hold something in perfect proportion, even though it seems like it should fall apart, is part of the heavenly artist's goal. Some artists and contemporary artists have alluded to the spirituality or literally, spoke directly to the spirituality. Others tried to diffuse that interpretation, turn it into a different kind of conceptual practice. Obviously in Robert Irwin's case, he's speaking directly to it. And let's say, hell, in case you didn't know. the visual language of hell. Swirls, asymmetry, off balance, unstable, chaos, disorder, dark, stark, whirlpools, contradictions and contrasts, glowing blacks and boiling reds. Satan is off-center, and the demons are active in their violence, devouring and shredding bodies. Features of the creatures are hideous and exaggerated beasts of horrible, malevolent nature. The imagination is free to run wild with its terror. The shapes of these terrors and hard contrasts, razor-edge delineations, or violent penetrations, constant zigzagging, squirming motion that feels audible, mutable and eternal torment, trapped forever inside the body with all its senses active and overwhelmed. Sadistic wit, sadistic wit and irony are used to describe the intolerable torments of confusion. There was an artist friend of mine years ago, Matt Mullican, who did a performance. And the performance was he had drawn 2 drawings, very simple line drawings on a piece of paper, and the performance was him sitting in a chair in front of one or the other, and then describing walking into the drawing and then disappearing into it, and talking about what he saw that we couldn't see. The 2 drawings that he did was the entrance to hell and the gateway to heaven. And the first one he went into was the entrance to hell, which was a hole in the ground. He goes over to it, describing it, drops down the hole. Now he's talking about what he's seen inside of it. And he was seeing a lot of stuff and making a very vivid impression for the audience of stuff he was seeing. And he was there about 45 minutes. And then he climbed back out and got back in it, pulled his chair over in front of the heaven drawing. And he climbed the stairway to heaven. And he was there about 5 minutes. Everything was described very quickly. And that has a lasting impression on me in terms of that insight into where the creative mind is the most vivid, most active, etc. And there's some artists that are capable of making hellish art that doesn't have high contrast colors and shadows. And this being one of the cases here, their first impression is whimsy to begin to actually look at what's in there and what's devouring what, and the sort of horror of that. I was reading something the other day about somebody was looking at this painting. This is a mural that's 20 feet long, and it's at the Guggenheim in Venice, and they saw in the right-hand side what looked like a written S-O-N, and then realized that across the whole top, Jackson Pollock had written his name Jackson. and I have been looking for a fucking month. If anyone sees it, go up and draw it out for me, please. Do you really see it? You want to point? J-A-C. Where's the J? Start with the J.
This piece of red right here, up there on the upper right, and then the A. The C is the most clear. Can you see it? It's like a pink.
It's going down at a diagonal.
No, it's like right across the perimeter at the top of the painting. It's like
Yeah.
margin.
Yeah, do you know how to use it? All right. It's the top one. Yeah, that one, yeah.
J, A, C, S, oh, sorry, A, S, O, N.
Okay. Yeah, the ED. You think it's bigger? Yeah. You're thinking like there's a J over here somewhere? Huh? Yeah. I've been like sitting there squinting. Yeah.
You used to say there was a horse in every Jackson painting.
Well, not in every, but I definitely know there's horses in some of his paintings, some of his drip paintings. I've found. Yeah.
But his name is in the lower left-hand corner.
This is Michelangelo. It's a detail from The Last Supper, and I wanted, not the Last Judgment, and I wanted to point out, now that I know how to use a pointer, there, this guy here on the far right, who is Minos. And Minos is the one that is telling the damned souls what ring of hell they're relegated to. And he's doing it with a serpent who, as you can see, has attached itself to the genitals of that character and wraps itself around Minos, however many rings there are. So in this case, whoever is being damned is going to the second ring of hell.
RFK.
You don't think he's going deeper, huh? The interesting thing about the rings of hell is Hitler would not be in the 9th ring of hell. He would be much higher up for being a shitty leader. The guy who tried to kill him would be in the 9th ring of hell, frozen in ice for eternity, because he betrayed his leader. How's that? The fucked up means something here, doesn't it? Yeah, true that. Anyway, the side story to this painting is that the face on Minos is actually a portrait of the clergy, whatever he was, in the Vatican, who oversaw the Sistine Chapel and was constantly on Michelangelo's back and riding him hard all the time, getting him chained, et cetera, et cetera. And so he got back at him. So now to the garden. The visual language of the garden is an open palette of color and shapes. All the possible descriptions of heaven or of hell are part of the language of our earthly existence. It is the language of instances and events of short duration. It is the language of thoughts and feelings that include hope, pleasure, violence, loss, eroticism, toil, aspiration, confusion, harmony, torment, delight. Like the colors of nature, it is full spectrum, warm and cool, hot, cold, light, shadow, subtle and dark, blends and contrasts. It is the physicality of surfaces of materials, the feel of fur, scales, moisture, flesh. The visual language of the garden offers the artist the least restrictions for their creative imagination. Irony, cynicism, wit, humor are all part of the language of the garden, modulating in its seriousness. And so the garden is obviously, it begins with the creation of Adam and then Eve, et cetera, et cetera. I bring these two up for a particular reason that is probably not true. But Bartolo de Fredi is a 1400s, mid-1400s, I believe, fresco. April and I were in Italy. Do you remember the town? Was it San Gimignano? It's in the cathedral at San Gimignano. And I was flabbergasted by this depiction of the narrative because first of all, my first impression was, my God, he's emerging from a vagina. God is birthing himself in order to create man. And the labial structure of it, of course, are angel wings, but it's such an unusual color to find angel wings depicted as that I'm kind of leaning towards that as an intention of some other associations. But in this case, God is presented as Jesus, the Son of, and has come to bring Adam to life. Now, in the Michelangelo, which is I don't know whether it's 50 or 100 years later, and this is on the Sistine Chapel as well, and this is the creation of Adam. By that time, humanism has come into play. And there's an argument that I have read about that is interpreting the structure in which God and the angels are as a diagram for either the brain or the uterus. And it's coming out of either a thought birth or a physical birth, that man again. This goes back also to what I talked about earlier in terms of how important it is that you understand that art is a constant reinterpretation, and that as new wisdom, new facts, new needs, etc. come into play, artists are constantly figuring out how do you reinterpret and represent narratives that we're familiar with, but in ways that add insight into how we're to understand these. And as I say, this could be bullshit. But there you have it. So this is obviously the spiral jetty, massive land sculpture. The choice of the spiral is interesting because it's both a symbol of journey itself. It's a symbol of birth, and the spiral is used as a shape and a form and a gesture of something moving outer into greater and greater space and circumference. This is obviously Bonnard. You can see, barely, but you can see the details of some of the animals that are surrounding the naked Eve-like figure. What seems to be on the edge of the garden itself. You'll later see how he uses a similar structure but changes the interpretation in his own work. I'm also struck on the left side with what seems to be like a pallet table or something, like he's included himself naked and smoking as also the painter in the scene of this pleasure. This is a curious depiction of the peaceable kingdom. You know, these are, the peaceable kingdom is you know, a belief, an attempt, a desire for harmony, right? Animal, nature, human harmonies, etc. The themes of it occur over and over historically. I was struck in this one by one he has in the foreground, that precisely that animals that should kill each other are living beautifully together. Children are safe amongst them, playful and whatnot. But what I'd never seen before was including that into the colonization of America, which, you know, as we are here and trying to figure out our past and how to address it, and as Sherry was acknowledging the land this sits on, and how that came to be, et cetera, et cetera. This speaks directly to, you know, the complexity of, you know, what the ideal of America was supposed to be. And here they make it look willing and mutual, but we all know that that wasn't the case. This is, you know, one of the aspects of the garden is that it's a place of pleasure. And so, you know, looking and any art that deals with pleasure, it can be sort of slotted into that category. The comforts of the body, the you know, eroticism, the strength of desires and pleasures, etc., are all depicted. And again, you know, with Matisse, you know, there's that quality of line, that you know, just sensuous motion of the distortions of the body add to that pleasure on top of the depiction of people having pleasure. And obviously his colors and stuff do that as well. This is a curious painting in that I find it contradictory to some extent, and you know, incredibly evocative, provocative, but trying to make sense out of one, the pleasure that the couple is having, and the beautiful parkland garden, et cetera, that is also erasing part of them with color I don't associate with violence. I don't associate it with anything other than, you know, the floral, the sweetness, the gentle, et cetera, but here the man is partly obliterated by the pink ground. But the other thing is that what seems to be whatever it is an exit, it's something that is a place that is prohibited to people, and which I find an unusual introduction into the pictorial narrative that he's doing. Bruce, can you tell me what the sound is?
Where's the man?
The man, you see his head, and then his shirt, and then his body's gone. Oops, sorry, wrong. Help. Did I go that far back? Okay, hold on. You see his head here, and then his shirt, and then you assume he was laying this way. Yeah. But what do you think the sound of that is?
I mean, it's in the upper register probably. I don't hear many low notes. I think it's all kind of high.
And what do you think the tempo of it is? Is it
It sounds fast.
it's what, fast?
It's got some momentum, don't you think?
Yeah, do I think, what do I know about fucking music? Huh?
Yeah, I think it's. Oh, you're talking about this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, oops, fuck.
You're talking about that stuff on top of the hearts and the
Yeah, the hearts that are on a musical score, that's what I was meaning, and it comes out here, whatever that says down there.
Yeah, so of course.
Yeah, and is it like a, like the hearts imply some kind of sweetness and sort of silly melodramatic tones? Oh, really? Whoa, that would be subversive. Yeah, no, I heard you, they are, absolutely. We're talking here of something that alludes to lynching, at the same time to child's play, right? So that's profoundly ambiguous. And then these blacked out signs that were either directional or whatever, I have no idea. It's a very complicated, what's that? Yeah, like it's all happening at the same time, yeah.
I think the music is the intro to Stevie Wonder's Brighter Star.
Stevie Wonder's, how does that go?
La 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 la.
Okay. And what is the content of that, of the song?
For you there will be a brighter star.
So it's
in my
hopeful.
eyes, the light of you is all I see.
Oh, that's a true love song. Wow.
But it's falling apart. The notes are falling off the scale.
Well, they're shedding their Valentine joy.
The dream.
Yeah.
As it's happening.
Yeah, this is a very compelling and complicated set of images. I'm glad you're all helping me out with that. And yeah, the monogram, right? Yeah, in such ornate script, but made out of nature. It's like a Art Nouveau thing. We should get him here to talk about. Yeah. Spirals are spirals and swirls, right? Are images of both a moving out, but they're also images of power and growth, evolution, motion, obviously. I was debating where to put this. The sense of a vaporous luminosity and stuff speaks to sort of heavenly aspirations. And then there's the border, which contradicts the fullness of that expansive luminosity that's in the painting. So I didn't know whether it was a garden painting which speaks to both the aspirational and the inability to, as within life, to achieve what the glow promises. I was going to put this Rothko next to a, no, I'm blank. Who did the Eisenheim altarpiece? That was, who? I can't hear you. Grunewald. I'm glad not everybody yelled it out at the same time, and way before I got there. Anyway, I will, when I get to the Grunewald, recall this painting, because they share a very similar palette and significance, I think. This is Barnett Newman's Broken Obelisk, which also, the obelisk is an aspirational, upward motion, spiritual, symbol, right? That's why the United States has one in its capital as well. It's meant to be something that is absolutely upliftingly positive as we move towards our goals, and the obelisk is something that's in many, if not all, kind of cultures, part of their language of that. So obviously a broken one is a catastrophe on a huge scale. But it also, oddly enough, reminds me of Michelangelo's God reaching out to tell, that moment of creation where the 2 points finally meet and something happens, and that the broken is only, for practical reasons that you just can't go all the way to heaven with the steel, But so that's another possible interpretation of it. But it also is in certain biblical language. There's the opposite of God and Satan, and there's they're both meet at a point of intersection and then go their own ways, kind of thing. It's a coming together and out of something and then going their own ways, which forms that pattern there of the X. And whether that was part of Newman's thinking or not, I don't know. The shit is about to hit the fan. Welcome to my world. You know I love you, baby. So expulsion is gonna happen at some point soon. Temptation, etc., enters it. What strikes me about the Rubens is it's so beautiful and sensuous and still within the sort of language of harmonies and whatever, that it doesn't feel like that he's thinking this is a bad moment. You know, he's enjoying the pleasure of its depiction big time. And this painting cracks me up. This looks like if you told Saturday Night Live to reenact the expulsion from the garden. I mean, what is going on here? I mean, oh God, what? I mean, hello. Yeah, you gotta love it, right? Anyway, this is the other Bonnard I mentioned, which has a similar structure, which in this case is now his wife Marta at the edge of their garden, the garden you saw depicted before, which approached the biblical scale of narrative. In here, she's holding an apple in her hand, so the temptation is present, the temptation to leave, to go out into what is now depicted on the outside, which is a urban, civilized, city-like, whatever world, a totally different kind of paradise than the one that they're going to emerge from. Cecily goes in hard on the drama of the flesh and the both the struggle of trying to come into being at the same time being destroyed, obliterated by it through all kinds of gestural intentions of paint language, and it also is, you can sort of make out within there that there might be a male and female there that are in the process of being obliterated or obliterating themselves with the energy of the paint.
Eric, why is this one in garden and not hell?
Because it is in the process of becoming, which is a temporal state, and the garden it depicts things that take place within a time frame. The time frame could be an entire life, but nonetheless, when that life's over, it doesn't even match what eternity is. So everything is within that framework of temporality, a transitioning, a change. I mean, when you look at the hell depictions, like Bosch or whatever, you're going to look at people who are swallowed by a giant mollusk shell forever. You're not thinking they're going to be gulped down and go on to the next one. So it's that kind of language is being used. So that's why I put it here as transitional. I actually never, that's the interesting thing about making up stuff and pretending you know what you're talking about. Because I'd never seen this painting, which I've certainly seen, but I've never seen it as a very interesting depiction where JFK is the god expelling, the gesture of expulsion. And you see in the lower right, the red figures are calling up the Dürer and earlier I'm blanking his his name, but you'll see it, Masaccio, thank you. Figures being expelled, so that the connection is real. Also, you'll see, again, as I described in early depictions of heaven, there's a circle. And there's a circle in which, sits God, etc., etc. There's a joint, and he alludes to that with a circle above his head. And then, of course, there's the astronaut, which is, one looks like it's returning to Earth, but also is something that deals with, distant space. So he's got some language stuff going on there that I think I could make a case for. And I put a couple of abstract paintings in the garden thing because they aspire for perfection, or that seems to be implied, that they're aspiring for perfection, a white square within a square kind of thing, but unable to balance it, would put it into the imperfection of life. And again, this where the sort of trying to move into the vortex of perfection at the same time it's dissipating at its edges. Njideka comes from Nigeria, so to lay on a Western interpretation of her reasons for making this painting are shaky at best, but there is a language here, and within the title itself, it alludes to some of those things that might be possible as a part of the, putting it all together. Again, talking to, there's a universality to the archetypes, and then there's the interpretation. And the interpretation is the specificity in which time that it is made within time, the time it lives. This painting seems to be a real dialogue between the man, the woman, the Adam, the Eve, just before they go out from the garden. Just, whether he's sitting there going, why? And she's going, fuck you. You got knowledge. What more do you want? Why? This is an Edward Monk painting, by the way. There's the Masaccio I was talking about. I threw these three in for, again, going back to interpretation. I never noticed this, but Adam and Eve expelled from the garden. Adam is almost always depicted on the right side of Eve. And you can see it up on the top, and you can see it on the bottom as well. These are at different times, centuries. So this thing of the symbolic aspect of that, why the right side, etc., is very important in terms of the, laying out the right being a place of a symbol for right, for the rightness of something. And then the left being the sinister, right? And so there, man and woman are depicted as embodying those two things, the good and evil within themselves. The blame is still on the woman here. But the pre-Raphaelites, which is the middle one, reverses that. And that's a pretty interesting shift that is made that I've never heard people, sort of talk about the significance of it. But it's worth pointing out that, if you come on things that are both familiar and new, and you see that some of that language has been moved, it's been moved for a purpose, and that purpose is significant to the understanding of interpretation. And also the gesture of it, the fact that they're holding each other, is also new within this context. And they're scurrying away, but there's also a kind of dance quality to it that I don't know whether there's, I don't know what all they're saying. I forget which pre-Raphaelite made this painting. Who is it? It was Burne Jones. And what do you think is going on there? Do you think they're more than happy to have accepted their fate, or comfortable being with each other? I've got some people here going, anyway, this I think is a powerful example in terms of moving it into the category of the expulsion, that part of the garden story that starts with the expulsion. This absolutely barren landscape, which was the curse of that God put on Adam and Eve, right? That they eat dirt and live off whatever they could scratch out of the earth, et cetera, et cetera. And Kiefer is bringing it up to date in that his background comes out as a child of Nazi Germany, and trying to understand what that actually means to him as a person who was a part of a culture that has, been rightfully designated evil, and yet, you were not in control of the direction, etc. So you're struggling to figure out what is me, what is my inheritance, what, et cetera, et cetera. So he's been wandering around this field of feeling and thought for his entire career.
What does Markish High mean?
It's Mark's Heath, which is, I don't know, I tried to find where that place is, but I couldn't find it. But it obviously is a significant field somewhere. But whether we anglicize it by calling it Mark's Heath, but in German it's Marcus Heide, I don't know. One of the attributes of the post-fall, the human life is an awareness of time, an awareness of death. And this Munch painting is called Between the Clock and the Bed, and shows obviously a man of a certain age standing rigidly between, time passing, being measured and passing in the clock, and the place where he will lay down to, presumably, to die. Jasper Johns picked up on that cross-hatching of the bedspread and made a lot of paintings based on that. Right there, yeah. Gail's saying that this represents the death of representation. That when Johns took it into the pure abstraction of it. But so time, passing, time, death. Excuse me. And obviously the reality of life, which is that you need to eat, you need to, farm, grow, et cetera, et cetera. That's a normal thing, but it's also within the language of art. It's about tasks and about tedium, repetition, doing something you do it the same every day. That kind of assembly line life, those kind of things are part of the way of dealing with time and death by making every day the same. And so it's a postponement of that anxiety and fear, and as well as that it's helping people survive. Again, this endless sense of task, lace making, the quiet of that, and the sameness of it, etc. You see in minimalism a similar idea of repetition, where every piece of the repetition is the same as the one before it and the one after it. A lot of modernist architecture, skyscrapers, also employ this thing where even though it rises to the heavens, it's not aspirational. It's something where each floor is exactly the same as the one below it, and it goes up in that kind of steady growth pattern. You'll never see a church, a cathedral that doesn't have a spire, right? That doesn't have a point in some direction to the heavens. But also, they introduced the practicality, the pragmatism of repetition, and in Carl Andre's case, it was also flatness. It was as anti-aspirational, as literal and factual as it could possibly be. And Leger introduces the worker in a kind of in our world of robots and stuff that he's presaged, but it's that kind of thing of the workaday world in the Industrial Revolution is moving us into cogs and cylinders and parts of that. I don't know if this could be made as an argument for a depiction of hell, but it's certainly on the border of that. And one of the things in terms of the language of art that got me interested and excited is the introduction of the arabesque line. That twisting, turning thing, the sensuality of it, here depicted they call it the rape of Proserpina, but I think it actually is Hades and Persephone, and he is not raping her, he's stealing her to the underground, and where she ultimately ends up spending half the year in Hades and half the year on Earth, because her mother Ceres, so angered by this, scorched the earth. And so the agreement was that for 6 months of the year she's with Hades, and 6 months she's on Earth. And the 6 months she's on Earth is the time of growth and freshness, whatever, and in hell is the burned, scorched, etc., etc. Yeah, Abraham.
I think it has to be in Hades because that's Cerberus, the three-headed god that guards hell, so that's his domain.
That's his dog.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Proserpina might be just another way of saying Persephone.
Yeah, when I looked it up, it didn't. It gave the Roman word name, but it wasn't Prosperina.
Well, the girl, Persephone, the daughter of Demeter of Ceres, right?
Ceres, yeah.
Is
Mhm.
playing a kind of garden, and with the other girls. It's a beautiful place. And then the earth sends up a very attractive Narcissus. And the girl is going for that flower, but suddenly her wicked uncle, with the connivance of her father, the two brothers connive, and the uncle grabs her and carries her down to the underworld. So it's really a garden, which is suddenly violated, and she goes down into hell.
Uh-huh. That son of a bitch.
Well, Demeter was pretty itchy, but she was pretty annoyed.
Yeah.
And so what she did.
No, I was thinking of the uncle, but
That's a sexual thing.
yeah.
But in any case, what happens then is Demeter is so, pardon the expression, pissed off that she refuses to let crops grow. And therefore, it brings pressure on the gods, because the gods like that greasy smoke from the sacrifice.
Oh.
And so in order to get their greasy smoke back, they do a deal with Demeter, and they allow her, she comes back to their company, and allows Persephone, I think, 2/3 of the year with the gods, and only 1/3 of the year down in hell.
Uh-huh.
The reason there was any
Obviously, it's a Southern European
it's very
thing where there's a longer growing season.
story, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, she ate the seeds of pomegranate. And that's what screwed her, as part of the expression. And she then had to stay for some time. It's like my wife, who was always picking these red seeds out of these pomegranates.
It's good to know.
That's the hymn to Demeter.
Thank you. That's illuminating. Anyway, we're going to end, right? I think we should end and with just some chat if people have chat. But and I'll just scroll through these if people want to ask questions and talk, because you've been an incredible, attentive audience here. So thank you for that. Okay. I want to point something out while you're there. Obviously, the arabesque line, that intertwining line, is a great way of describing eroticism. And you see within the shunga, the porno, Japanese porno, how beautiful, fabulous, sensuous, articulate as they are in terms of capturing the sexual, whether it's sex by an octopus or etc. Inca Essenhai, Inca Essenhai here obviously employs a similar sense of rearing horse, but nonetheless this kind of incredible movement, sensuous movement. This one here, which is by Elliot Pouquet. Where's Elliot Pouquet? Here. This one here. That painting looks like it's a calligraphy exercise, right? It's certainly imitating that sense of those fluid scripted lines and et cetera, and it also has a feeling of speed in the controlled gesture of it and whatnot. When you see the actual painting, those lines are scratched with a razor blade into a gessoed surface, and they take forever to do. So that process, that weird process that she came up with for trying to, betray a kind of OCD nature of something where she's perfectly happy to sit there perfectly scratching this sort of, it blows my mind. Anyway. I put this Blake in. Of course, Blake belongs obviously to the discussion, the language, etc. of heaven, hell, the earth, the poetry of it, the imagery of it, etc. But I really put it in because Kristen, when I told her what I wanted to do, she said, "You're going to put Blake in, aren't you?" I got to be honest. I have not read in depth Blake. So I am not an expert in it, but if she wants to talk about it, yeah, she's hiding now. Get what you wish for, huh? Anyway. Yeah, please, I beg you.
Sorry. So you briefly mentioned, Brent skipped down the idea of Angelica Crosby being relating to African arts, although her work that was made, it was actually made within the context, and her education is in Western art history. So my question is really about if you've begun the process of exploring this tripartite way in arts that are not of Western traditions, that are actually originating from indigenous traditions or other global traditions, because I think that there are similar paradigms that have been explored even in people like Joseph Campbell writing about that some of these things really are universal and they go from one language to another.
Yes, and the short answer is no, but not because you're not right about it, just in terms of my scholarship isn't obviously there. But I, in sort of looking at for imagery and stuff, you come across, the world of, and there's certainly those kind of mythologies in Hinduism and stuff like that, creation myths and stuff within that deal with those same energies of turbulence and order and et cetera, and stuff. But yeah, this is Grunewald's thing as well, and this was the Eisenheim altarpiece, or Isenheim altarpiece, was done for a hospital. And it was a hospital for skin afflictions. That a lot of it was for people suffering from the poisoning, the devastating poisoning of ergot, which is the fermented and rotten wheat, I think it is, right? Rice. What is it? Rice? Rye. Sorry, rye. Anyway, so he did this thing, which is a biblical narrative structure, traditional, but with a level of focus on the horrors of the flesh that were in sympathy to those. So he was not ignoring them. He was painting their afflictions in a very real, painful to us to look at even way, as you can see in the, this poor suffering character on the bottom here, for example, as Saint Anthony, the burning flesh, the horror of the affliction of this disease is called Saint Anthony's fire. And so here he is being tempted by the demons out in his exile. He's self-exiled to the desert to meditate on life and truth and God and commune with, etc. And he's being haunted and taunted by all these horrible creatures. This is his depiction of the crucifixion of Christ, and again focusing on the just extreme horror of the flesh and the afflicted flesh. And then he did this amazing thing. This is the one I wanted to also put the Rothko next to, because there's a similar ascendance in the Rothko. But what's amazing is the Christ figure resurrected with the best flesh anyone could possibly have, right? There is not a mark on it. And so that also is the subtext of you know, the religious you know, faith in death and resurrection, suffering and sacrifice, etc. He keeps his stigmatas, I know.
Wait, how is that one not heaven?
What is what?
How come this one is not falling into the heaven category?
Again, because it's a transition too. So it is a moment in time. That's why I put it there. I mean, I think probably an argument could be made that it belongs there. The Rothko also belongs in the heaven thing in terms of that upward motion, verticality, the light at the top, the luminosity, those kind of things. This is the garden pre-cancer culture, cancel culture. Anyway, I'm just going to keep going if you don't start talking.
I mean, does anybody around here have comments that they want to share? Because there's a mic right here.
That's
Rodin.
Yeah, that's Adam and Eve. Yeah. And if anyone gets a chance, hey, Paul, if anyone gets a chance to see there's one at the Met, and I highly recommend looking at Eve's back. Yeah. It's one of the most expressive backs, sculptural backs you'll ever come across. Oh, yeah.
Eric is wonderful, helping us remember about looking and not seeing, when right above you, the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog is actually supposed to be a pangram, which means it has every letter in the alphabet, except it's wrong. It should be the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. And there's been the exhibit all this time, and this is there, so looking and not seeing.
Guards, get this man! Just kidding. Great observation, Paul. Thank you. I didn't do the poster, so. But I took typing class in 8th grade, and I had to type this, but I didn't obviously pay enough attention to it to notice it. Anyway.
Here we go.
Yes.
So it's
I'm glad you're here.
hey there. It strikes me as kind of a crazy time to be talking about this as a set of sort of historical ideas or phenomena when we've seen like the last 2 years of ignorable but irrefutable proof that hell exists and it's real. And it's in, right, well this is however you curate your feeds. Muddy trenches in Ukraine, one-time streets and markets in Gaza. Same time, like Hollywood has been training us up to sort of prepare for this moment through what must be 100 or so zombie movie franchises, which are like less a vision of, well, they're hell, but they're less like the end of the world than they are the end of government. And then meanwhile, like half of the voting populace, that's the world that ought to be, is the world without government. There's a question, which is, okay, Finny, where are you? Your pop likes to say that jazz, no good jazz can come out of Denmark. If pressed, he will say no good art can come out of Denmark.
He'd be a little
Because they're
wrong
too
on
happy.
that one.
They're too happy. So,
And he's never seen a Bruegel.
is okay, well, right, well, we're talking about Denmark now. Is the world that ought to be one without art? Is there good art in heaven? We know there's good art in hell, because that's where the artists are.
It's not that I had a finish to the lecture. What I had is just a bunch of slides to chat it up about. But I would disagree with Earl in that we're in hell and have been for the last couple of years. We certainly are in chaos. We're in transition. We're in a very ugly nature of human nature, etc. April and I had the luck a month ago or so to be in Paris for a show at the Louvre on the history of the fool. And that's a history that goes back to the 1400s and moves forward. It goes up to today, but the show went up to the 19th century. And what was compelling about it and revelatory about it was that the way the artists treated the subject matter was one in which they understood that time, life, craziness, etc. is cyclical, and that we're in a bad time for sure. But what was interesting was that it wasn't that they had a political commentary on it. They dealt with satire, they dealt with whimsy, they dealt with, sort of very sort of funny and graphic, childlike, scatological humor, things like that. But they also did works that were about the overview, that they accepted humanity itself within this decadence, this process that we're going through. It was interesting in how resonant it was to today, with the madness that we're experiencing, and the comedy of the weirdness that we're experiencing, and the chaos, and the et cetera, et cetera. But it also was something that it made me feel like there has to be some kind of overview rather than agenda to how we creatively deal with what we're going through now, because I'm sure we're all pressed to figure out how to articulate this chaos. So anyway, I know that was a response to, but not necessarily answering your question.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's call it quits.